what a name! What a lovely name!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live or premiering, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Giuseppe Montesano, Trying to Twingle, Mitch Kennedy, Original D-Rose, Rod, The Name's Burley, Twad Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, Flat Earth Travolta, JMelds24, Unimento, M, Iron26, Endless, Goldie McKinnon, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Bogey, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Rob W, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Nealands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. And now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
What's a deck crew?
They're the ones that tie the rebar on the floor of the skyscrapers.
Not a chance, buddy.
But there's a floor right below you, Neil. You know, it's not like you can fall off.
Afternoon, guys.
Hello, Adam.
Hey.
What's going on, Mr. Meekin?
Yeah. Take it up with Adam. Go ahead. Tell him, John.
What have I done now?
I'm back.
Nothing.
Good then.
What are you talking?
I'll admit to that. I'll admit to that.
It's just a little concerned that when D-Rose finds out that blind spot is on G plus panel, he may get a little.
Easy for you to say,
You all
Neil.
good, guys?
Say again, Neil. I didn't get that, mate. You roboted.
Yeah, I'm working. Sorry, I'll get back to you.
I did. Chatty pre-show then.
Nathan's experiencing some technical difficulties at the moment.
I didn't think it was good when I saw the link go up at 1 o'clock, but
Well, he took out his primary processing units, and he meant to take out the other ones.
yeah, it's over my head. That is, John. All that stuff.
It's on the edge of my understanding. Well, you know, I get it in principle, but I don't understand all the terms, and you know what I mean.
Yeah. What was Neil on about D-Rose? Just.
Well, D-Rose did not seem happy with the attention that the pup was receiving. Blind spot. And I was like, maybe we shouldn't tell him right now.
Tell him what?
But
That the blind spot is on G plus, and he's
Anyone
on,
who goes into
now
that
it's Skype.
debate. But anybody who goes into Master B can join Nathan's show via the meet. It doesn't make you a panel member.
Yeah, it does.
Nathan picks
no,
them.
just for the record, that is exactly what makes you a panel member. That is the only thing that makes you a panel member.
I knew it. I was right.
You mean you don't think we're special?
But what you're saying is because you're on the panel and have a gateway that other people also have, you specifically are the panel because what?
No. The joking aside, I've always read it that's there, the meet, the Google Hangout, whatever it was, that was always there for people to join in Master B. But there's certain people you invite to say, it's nice if you come.
Yes.
Like Neil's got his role, I've got my role, and there's Eli's got his role now, you know what I mean? And over time, people by regular attendance then become a panel member. There's not like an official vote, but eventually you are one, aren't you?
Right. I mean, at the moment, we have a slight abundance of black people, but we don't have any blind people. So, it's one of those.
I'm liking it. Box ticking exercise.
Once you get into G Plus Master B, you could get on the panel. Well, you know what I'm saying? You could join the show from G Plus.
As a bog standard Italian American, you have no say in this.
You've got too much privilege in your life.
You're too boring.
No.
You don't even have an interesting stereotype, Neil. So, just give up.
I said I pushed my way. I'll admit to that.
It's not true, actually. You do have a reasonably interesting stereotype. But there we go.
Listen, I wanted to be where the big boys were hanging because that's where I was getting my understanding of what's happening. Not in freaking Discord. I couldn't hear anything but rumpus always rumpusing.
But that's why I put Blind Spot into Master B, because he's made a decent contribution and he should be aware of what's going off. I didn't think that automatically assumed and made you anything other than having the access to the invite.
I specifically wanted him in G+. So I did actually say to him, have you got your Skype info? Can I put you in G+? So I'm happy he's there.
I did, but it's not my show, and I didn't want to suggest it. So I'm glad someone else does.
That's perfectly fine. I'm sure you were around when I was saying, can I get your info? Can I get you into G+? I'm sure you picked up on that. You must have done.
No, I just did it independent myself yesterday.
Oh, right. Well, then how dare you?
I was going to suggest to the Blind Spot that he would talk to you about getting in G+.
Look, is there any even discussion that Blind Spot is basically amazing?
I think it's top bloke.
Right. That's the end of it, isn't it? The guy's ace. What more do you want?
Why don't you just put D-Rose in and settle it? Then it's all done.
No.
Because D-Rose, you need to be able to keep him under control, i.e. be able to... close. I need the muting functionality of Discord enabled for D-Rose. I very rarely use it, actually, the functionality. It's more often I'll ask a mod to do it. Can you mute that person?
The threat is sufficient in most
Exactly.
cases.
But listen, John has that sixth sense where he thinks that D-Rose may be offended, and D-Rose is a financial contributor to the show, correct?
There's many financial contributors to the show. Nobody gets any more. There is a line that I have to draw mentally in my head between what people are in terms of what they offer me in support and what they are in terms of what they offer an audience. And those two things, unfortunately, are, without me being able to moan about it, entwined. I realise that. However, I have to kind of, to a certain degree, separate that. And as a result and a consequence, I have lost significant financial backing from other people for that reason. However, I don't know if it's an ethical thing or what we describe it as. There's a certain standard on the show that overrides the financial support, because in a long term way of thinking of these things, if I enable or if I allow somebody to offer financial support and then dictate how the show is run, that's the end of the show. That's the beginning of the end. That's.
Hold on, please.
And that's why I love you. That time when you went on Ball Busters, You showed me who you were.
What you're saying is
that was Flowbusters.
you watched me.
Flowbusters, yeah.
You watched me throw a huge ton of financial support and community support away in one small sitting by sticking to my guns. Well, I appreciate that, Neil.
Freaking right.
It was tough times financially, and still is. But Bob's dead now, so actually, since his death, as much as it's horrible to talk ill of the dead, a lot of the poison that Bob was pouring into people's ears has stopped now.
Yeah, but a well doesn't clean itself immediately after you stop pouring the poison in. You know what I mean? But my point is, you're talking about a moral dilemma, not an ethical one. Ethics would dictate you do the opposite of morals in this situation.
Ethically, I should do the opposite. Ethically, I see what you mean. Ethically, I should get behind the people who've put the work in to earn the coin to give me the coin. They should be my priority. Is that what you're saying? Ethically, that should be the priority. But morally,
right.
my moral, yeah, it is morally. You're right. Yeah, morally, I don't want to do that, and unfortunately, that means unfortunate sacrifices. I don't know what other word to use when it comes to financial support from people. When you have to disagree with them, you have to put aside the fact that they've put money in your pocket and go, unfortunately, you're wrong. That's what this show's about. So you've supported it financially because of what it was up until this moment. Now you want it to be different because you've supported it financially because you want to be right. I can't do that. It's just unfortunate, and it has cost me dearly in the past. But it's just the way it goes.
Yeah, but you're right. Once you go ahead.
I was just going to say ethics. That's one of the places where ethics and morals really diverge, is in funding, because you're talking about business morality, you know, as opposed to actual morality. And business morality is always towards the consumer or the money, you know.
Well, those two things also cross wires, because if you think about it from one point of view, yes, there are people who contribute to the show in terms of the content being produced, like D Rose is a good example. However, he's also a viewer, and the viewership support the show financially. So then there's a conflict of interest, isn't there? Because one of the show producers, if you want to look at it in that way, is a financial contributor and wants to change the way the show is produced. Whereas the people who are supporting financially because they are viewers and like the way it's currently produced, or don't want us to suddenly start talking about ether or whatever it is that's speculation, they will be displeased and also relinquish, themselves of my viewership, or however you want to phrase it. So there is a balance to be struck ethically and morally in that regard. But the precedent is always going to be the content of the show, because once you sacrifice that, it's like, that's selling out, isn't it? At that point, when you go, okay,
exactly,
I'll make an exception this time because you really believe in the ether and you have given me several £100. So for now, I'll just get behind you. Please keep giving me money. That's the beginning of the end.
You hit it right in the head. Once you start down that path, it's over.
Well, the beginning of that path was long, long, long ago, right? At the point that the Congress meeting happened, where they went, we're going to make baller content preferred content. At that point, it was clear from a financial perspective what needed to be done. Well, I needed to be Dave McKeegan. I'd be very well off if I was doing what Dave McKeegan did, right? He's realised there's a preferred content preference for searches aimed towards Flat Earth. Type in Flat Earth, you'll find Dave McKeegan. And financially, he's going to do very well from that. Now, knowing that that's wrong from a moral point of view, well, from a financial one, give the people what they want. It's very profitable. Affirm their bias in a ball and they'll give you money for it and give you viewership. And unfortunately for us, regardless of what your intent is when you type in the words Flat Earth to YouTube, you'll find your way to that content. So that would be the sensible content to produce, wouldn't it? With the devil on your shoulder going, you know more about the ball than all of these numpties. You can produce better videos than all of them. Just produce a few baller videos. You'll be fine. You'll do well. Right? Like Ranty did.
Well, that's funny. I was thinking that it would be profitable for all of us to have anti-flat Earth channels, just where we distribute the nonsense that we'll have to argue with later. You know, you might as well lead your enemy the direction you want to go instead of the dumbass one they're walking down now.
That's the sensible thing to do, actually. If you want an opposition, lead it yourself, right? That's what they do. And, well, some people might look down on that and go, what, are you going to use the tyrant's tactics? Well, yeah. Sometimes you have to pick up their weapons and use them. And in the case of, let's say all we were ever offered was rumpus-esque type people, nothing would ever be heard, literally. You wouldn't hear any of the information. So at that point, you've got to then go, okay, well, we know all the arguments and we can disseminate them ourselves. So wouldn't it not make more sense? That's why Arwin's so valuable. This is working, by the way. It's cooking the bollocks off my graphics card. But other than it doing what it did when I first tried this method and then very quickly decided not to do it, this is functioning. This is still live to members. No crashes. Seems okay. Other than, like I say, the graphics card. But that's going to get replaced. So I reckon this will cobble on. I don't need to rip it apart to change the memory config. Other than my mouse being very unresponsive, which is a nightmare. I couldn't shut the show down yesterday. I was like, I said it as well, stupid idiot. I was like, come on, mouse, come on. Right at the end of the stream. I just don't want those sort of technical ramblings to get through on the recording, but they did. Anyway, me and my frustration with the memory config. But I think that's the sensible thing to do. If the iGPU is heavily dependent on system memory, which isn't configured correctly, don't use it. So I've stopped using it, and now I'm using the graphics card instead. And it's, other than its issues, which are different, it seems to be not crashing the stream. So this is what I'm going to do till it gets reconfigured.
Well, you know, in any other genre, I would say those technical slips going through would be a problem. But in this hyper paranoid area of YouTube we seem to be in, it probably is beneficial to some of the audience members to know that you are just a single YouTuber having trouble getting your stream out.
Yeah, I am
You
and
know
I'm
what I
not,
talking
though.
about?
I mean, I said this the other day, right? One thing that's become more and more apparent as time's passed, especially now, literally right now, because the guy who bought the computer, Paul, invested heavily in exceptionally good components all round. There was several aspects of redundancy to streaming, one of which I've just literally implemented. I can use a different encoder. Now, for efficiency reasons, I used the CPU one. It was the one that used the least power and therefore generated the least heat. Well, to a certain extent, that problem's actually been solved now. Or at least for the GPU, it's mounted correctly. So it's not overheating. It's getting very hot, more hot than I'd like, but it's not overheating. It's already shagged from overheating and is starting to show its problems. But ultimately, I know that the way it can be configured, and there's already a GPU sat on a shelf, is such that it will be very good when it's working. Now, even though it's not currently very good, there's very few days that have gone by that I haven't had a stream because of the amount of redundancy the computer's got built within, because it's good spec. So like now, it's not happy, but it's working. Well, that's because it's a really expensive piece of hardware with redundancy already paid for. So, you know, every dime that's gone into this computer has been utilized at some point. There's been no aspects of its technology that I haven't used to some effect at some point. And that's meant that the stream has had, what, in the last 8 months? 5, maybe not even that, 4 missed streams total. That's pretty good for a computer that's rough and, you know, new tech and not configured properly and overheating and not been bolted together properly. For all those things, the fact that it's still cobbling on doing its thing is pretty amazing, I would say.
So you're like Pawn. If it wasn't for your superior intellect, you would have not survived.
No, if it wasn't for someone spending an absolute shit ton of money on a computer with a lot of redundant technology in it, then I definitely have missed a lot more streams. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you got to give yourself some credit. You do a lot of things that we're not privy to with the computer. To get like yesterday, for instance, you got that puppy up and running, and you gave us a show and an after show.
Yeah, I was quite pleased with that. But today I've done the same thing, Neil. Exactly the same thing happened. I've run a stream, it's crashed. I've gone in, reconfigured OBS. Neil's buggered off while I'm telling you this. Anyway, I've reconfigured OBS, and now it works. So now the lucky members get to listen to this exciting talk.
I think it's part of it's important though because it makes you more human than just a character on a YouTube channel, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's partially why I like to record the pre-shows. You know, when we're chit-chatting, I can't remember one of the commenters, it might have even been Blind Spot himself, who was like, I didn't understand the format when I first stumbled across it, because I stumbled across the Uncut and After show. So the show starts out seemingly professionally, proper intro, proper, you know, loud music, all the rest of the stuff you'd expect from a reasonably well-produced show, straight into a bit of total dead air, and then a slow conversation building. You're like, what's all this? This doesn't seem like what I was expecting. Then you get into the live show and it's all, you know, a correct pace and everyone's warmed up. But if you don't come across the live show first, it's going to be a bit confusing. That said, the amount of editable clips from the pre-show is, I couldn't count them. There's been loads. So if I wasn't recording that, all of that would have been lost to the sands of time.
Yeah, and there's also something to be said about like other shows have scripts that they go over before the show, where they it's like they have the show prior to having the show. Have you been involved in any of those yet?
Me? Scripted shows? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, when I
Well, it's
was a
not
rep,
scripted.
but not in this context. So the only scripted show I ever took part in was Gadget Show, and the Gadget Show is just a technology review show. And even then, where you would expect it to be very, here's the technology, here's our opinions on it, it was scripted, which a lot of people probably didn't realize, you know, because it seems so natural. But that's the talent doing their work, right?
Yeah, but like somebody was telling me um, that some shows, not necessarily Glowbusters, but shows like that in this arena, would have a sit down prior to the show where they talked about the things they were going to talk about on the show and made sure they got their story straight.
Yeah,
Uh,
I used to do that on
Show
on
notes.
Iron Realm.
Yeah, show notes.
We'd have a meeting every Wednesday to what we're going to discuss. Because it was less of an open format like this. So it was us guys, you know, the Iron Realm guys talking, but we'd often have arranged some topics. So it's not necessarily gone through everything so you know what people's responses are, but what are the interesting bits in Flat Earth this week is kind of what you'd. This is in 2016, 17, 18 sort of thing. So as things are coming out, you're just saying, right, what will we cover this week? But never scripted responses or anything. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it?
yeah, not necessarily the response is scripted, but it is a form of scripted. You know what I mean?
I don't think there's anything wrong with
Pre.
that. Having a plan for what you're going to do on a show is nothing wrong with that. If you're only doing one show a week, then you've got all the time in the world to do that. And I think you should. If I was only doing one show a week, I would do considerably more preparation. I mean, because currently I do none, literally zero.
Right. But I'm just saying, in the genre we find ourselves in, and I never said that there was a problem with it. I'm not trying to attack it. There seems to be people who would attack it based on that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a nutty part of the internet to be in.
Well, this bit you couldn't script because the uniqueness is the spontaneity of the chat. And we might have housekeeping questions just to stimulate things every now and again if it just does dry. But generally, it's the spontaneity that's the USP, really. It can be anything. Look at that chat.
Yeah, I wasn't bringing this up to attack the show at all. The other one I was
No, I don't think you were. I wasn't suggesting that you were.
Okay, good.
What's your problem today, John?
Hasn't got a problem. You're going to give him one. Anyway,
Well, he had an issue about G plus. Now he's talking about that the show might be scripted.
Didn't say that. That's not what he said at all.
Oh, all I heard was scripted.
Right.
No.
Exhibit
Going in and
A,
out.
Neil. As my Exhibit A, Neil.
Good morning, guys.
Hey,
Listen,
chocolate.
Peach J's been telling me and Chocolate my shows for the longest time.
Would it be a bad thing if it was scripted, Neil?
How would Neil script his interruptions?
I don't know.
There wouldn't be any. If it was scripted, there'd be no interruptions.
No, we'd have to script the interruptions. People like Neil. If it was, we'd have to put them in.
Because I tell Neil that people like his interruptions doesn't necessarily mean that's the consensus view.
I didn't say the majority of people liked them. It was just right. I've got to go dentist at 2. So if you've got a minute, as it's pre-show,
Go on then.
this is called Adam's failure. I showed it last night with Flatsoid. So I went off hoping to use a bit of geometry to calculate a point of location and therefore distance using geometry assumed on the ball. Assuming that I could probably get the height of a star, even though they'd said it, and I've said they put it out to infinity. So what I did here, just to analyze that, was take a ball and place. You can see the line through the middle. That's the equator. There's the polar lines. And take 2 points, one 30 degrees north of the equator and one 30 degrees south. Then I've got, you see this equator line, it goes all the way out, and that will be the GP line of the star for this point there. Now, I'm going to take a 60-degree elevation angle from this point here, and that means I should be lining up with the GP, with the star, with its matching GP here. And conversely, in the southern, another 60-degree elevation angle the other way, off the tangent I've created, that should give me the GP here still. Which is what you think. And at some point, they should be meeting in space, but they don't. And this is the interesting point. Nothing meets. All you get is a dissolution of ability to see the detail. Well, actually, in their geometry, the star, its GP, is not what you're aligning up to. You're aligning up to the blue line. And the blue line and the black line never meet, ever. This blue line does not go to the center point of this black line. It just goes out in forever, never, ever, ever meeting. So there is no point that these, and you can see, look, with the point in the southern measurement, that's the same. It's measuring the GP of this star. But as you can see, the lines never, ever meet. And that seems to be a major flaw because they therefore have no geometry whatsoever. I don't even know what they're lining up to because as you can see, these things to work, they do not ever meet. And the sextant doesn't point at the star. The only claim they can have is dissolution to the point that all of these merge. And the point source is all of them together, which doesn't make sense because I can have another angle down here going off to find it as well. And that won't meet either. So that was just kind of the end confirmation, Adam's failure, as I've called it, because I did want to try and measure some lengths using some geometric axioms, but it failed miserably because the points never ever meet. But I said that's the kind of net summation of, is it Matthew Learns or somebody doing celestial navigation on the outside of a ball? This is the consequence. It doesn't work. You have to take it to hell and turn the celestial sphere into the surface of the earth. But there you go.
What ball?
You'll get good point, Chocolate.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with us, Adam. Yeah, that's why it gets transposed to hell, correct?
Correct, yeah.
It has to work off an equatorial plane because the angles can only be converging, with the apologetics of the lines being essentially parallel because the distance is infinite, which it's not in a heliocentric model, but that's what they say when they've transposed it to hell. Because the lines essentially are parallel, the line that's coming to you at the surface matches the line that will go to the centre of hell and then be plotted out with a flat baseline along the equatorial plane, out through the sphere and to the dome of the heavens.
Yeah. So what Flatoid was saying last night was, and it's a good point, because you go to hell, then the distance to the stars becomes R. Because once you've got your flat plane in hell, then the point of that you're trying to match is the surface, which can be the celestial dome then, assuming therefore the distance is always R. That's a way of understanding their mathematics and the way they do it, because they have to take it to the center. Basically, the celestial dome can then become the surface of the earth because you're in the center. That's how they do the math.
Hold on a minute. If that would put the celestial or the celestials at 3959 above your head.
Correct. But in terms of the distance plotted out to the infinite distance to the stars, it doesn't make any difference to them once they're plotting it from hell. Because you're right, yeah, suddenly the roof is the distance of the radius, if you're going to plot the stars as being on the surface. They don't. They suggest that what's actually happening is the star's rotational movement is as a consequence of you at the centre of Earth, and therefore the ground becomes the protractor, not the dome of the heavens. That's why you get two. That's the globe burger. You at the centre, you're the meat, you're the patty, and then you've got the bun being the top and bottom globe that is redundant because they'll project the line out along the ground in hell on a flat plane, equatorial in nature, and then out through the sphere to the dome of the heavens. So therefore, the only thing you could call the globe at that point is the protractor, because you're at the center point where the angle originates in hell, and then the curve of the protractor would be the curve of the surface, because you're not on the surface anymore. So that's the only real description of what's going to happen when you twist the protractor. You're twisting the globe surface itself as a protractor. When you're moving at 15 degrees an hour, the celestial items, not the Earth. So it becomes a protractor.
They don't do that either. They don't do that either.
That was good. No, Flatsoid show yesterday. Adam did it while Flatsoid was drawing it, and I thought it really worked out well. And then Flatsoid did a nice little drawing and explained how they inverted. Is that the same thing? Because it was in the books that 10th Man was distributing, during the pre-show.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but the 3959, right? That being the distance above your head to whatever star is at your GP. It seems like that's what they're assuming, and then turning it into an infinite distance away so that they can live on the outside of the protractor.
Yes.
But the protractor itself is not the Earth, it's the celestial dome.
Correct. The lines that the end point of the measured angle is to the stars at infinite distance in their model when you're in hell. But what I'm saying isn't that. I'm saying that the only thing I can associate to that curve over your position with lines that are going to emanate through what I'm calling the protractor, actually globe surface, is a protractor, because I can't think of any other. It's not even redundant. It's so surplus to need that's the only thing I can ascribe to it to give it a genuine use. Well, if the globe burger is the protractor itself, then at least it seems like it's got some practical use, because you would draw lines emanating from the origin of the angle at the vertex through the protractor out to what you were measuring. Obviously, the end of the protractor doesn't necessarily represent the end of the angle. But if you just put another
It'd have to be
protractor in
the-
the middle of the globe burger, it's like then you've got protractor, you've got you at the center with the vertex at that point. Then you've got the protractor, then you've got the globe burger, then you've got the celestial sphere. You're like, well, the globe burger's still redundant, so at least if you turn it into a protractor, it makes a little bit more sense to me.
Well, it wouldn't be redundant at that point. Then it would be detrimental.
Exactly,
Because-
it's redundant's the wrong word, because at least with redundancy, like me changing the encoder today, right? Redundancy means it's not currently being used, but if something else fails, I can employ that method. It's a redundant method, but it might be being used at some point. Redundancy is there to stop things failing. Well, in this instance, the globe around the equatorial plane, the globe surface has absolutely no use. It's to detrimental effect, because you've suddenly got to convert the angles to be parallel lights at infinite distances, rather than just starting with the plane and doing nothing. You don't have to do anything, you just measure the angle. So it's to the
Well, you wouldn't be able to-
methodology's detriment.
You wouldn't be able to measure the angle if you were under the ground, because
you're
nobody can see through.
Yeah, if you're inferring that the globe is actually the surface you're standing on, then you're never going to get the angle correct. It's like, that's why it's a housekeeping question. So it's to its detriment. It's to the process's detriment. So you can't say it's redundant. You can't say it's surplus, because it's not even surplus. It's detrimental.
But they don't deny that they get their measurements from the center of the earth. They freely admit it.
But they don't. Who's going to the
Yes, they
center
do.
of the? Who's going to the center of the molten iron core at 3959
They're
to have
not
an
saying they're
equatorial
going
plane?
to the center.
They put
They're
the
not saying
measurements.
they're going to the center. They're saying they're getting their measurements from the center of Earth.
No, Neil,
They're
that's not what they're saying.
Yeah,
That's not what they're saying. You have
you
to
go
be,
to the day.
no. What they're trying to say, you have to keep up to date with the bullshit that they're coming out with. What they're trying
Okay,
to
so
say,
maybe this is no bullshit. Tell me.
yeah. What they're trying to say, this is why it's important to listen to Bev's show, right? The latest is we have Charles Glober Math trying to claim that the vertex, which is the point, P-O-I-N-T, point of intersection, is the angle, which means they can have an angle by just putting a point on a circle and claim that's an angle. So they're trying to remove the horizontal from the right angle.
You don't need to explain what the implications are. So what you're saying is Charles has essentially gone, sod it, throw my hands in the air, I'm just going to have to bullshit my way through this mathematically.
Yeah. Because
Right.
the lead up to that was he tried to claim that a zenith angle didn't require a horizontal, whereas a zenith angle and an elevation angle are exactly the same thing. They both require the 90 degrees. So a zenith angle is an angle with reference to horizontal, whereas an elevation angle is an angle with reference to vertical.
But this
you
is the same
can't
man.
have-
This is the same man that has suggested to have his globe Earth faith implemented. He did not need to assume R. So correct me if I'm wrong. In every one of these examples, Charles is assuming R.
Well, yeah, of course he is.
Right.
But-
Just
yeah.
want to clarify that
Yeah.
just at this position now that obviously for Charles, his blatant, outrageous lies about not needing to do that ever were overcome by me personally in front of him live, in front of his own audience. Obviously, I never leave my echo chamber, but it was in front of Charles's audience when I pointed out that specific lie. Now that that's all calmed down and been forgotten about, Charles is just back at his old lying nature of I will just assume R and then justify how I can get angles from a point. Pathetic. What a shyster. Just like the other teacher, just like Matthew Learns. Total shyster. More than happy to lie.
That
Scum.
But
that is not getting an
Let's talk about
angle
John.
from a point. That's you don't get an angle from a point
No, you don't.
like that on a sphere.
Nope.
You get an angle to a point on a sphere that way. But they got rid of that when they called out refraction as a response to the black swan. So they don't even have that anymore.
no,
Angle
no,
to a point
you're
on a
missing.
sphere.
I think I'm missing what the point. Pardon the pun. What the point is? No, Charles is trying to claim that the vertex, which is the point of intersection, it's an intersecting point. It is not It's like an internal intersection point. He's trying to claim that is the angle. No, it is not. But you can have two curved lines intersecting. You understand? You can have a straight line and a curved line intersecting. He's trying to claim the point itself is an angle. An angle is two straight lines meeting at a point.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Before we go on to housekeeping, I would like to say something about.
That's D Rose. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, there's a meme out there where a monkey touches his butt and then sniffs his finger and falls over. That's Charles Flat Earth math with what he's telling people right now about a point on a circle is an angle.
Yeah, I'm glad you summarised it. Yeah, so the point that Charles is currently trying to punt, Charles is referred to fondly by Brian as globe Earth math, but officially goes by flat Earth math in irony. Nevertheless, Charles, that's Flat Earth Math YouTube channel, has currently been punting the idea that you can get an angle from or to. Which one's he specifically saying? Does anybody know? From or to a curve?
No, he's claiming the point, right? The point of a vertex point, which would be if he was to extrapolate that point, it would involve a vertical and it would involve a tangent plane horizontal. But he's not claiming the tangent plane horizontal or the vertical. He's claiming the point itself is the angle, right? But you have to look at the psychology of why he's claiming this. Because prior to this, he was trying to claim that a zenith angle didn't require, right? A zenith angle didn't require a horizontal. So now what he's trying to do is claim that he's basically trying to claim that he's getting a horizontal from a point. Whereas you can't horizontal. Sorry, let me finish. 1 second. 1 second, then. He's claiming this because what he's trying to do is avoid having the use or need of a horizontal. So he can make an angle and then bring it to the center of his globe without actually making an angle. Because you can't make an angle from a point, an angle that's two straight lines meeting at a vertex point. That's the intersection point. It is not the angle. Because you can have two curved lines meeting at a vertex point. Do you understand?
Yes, I do. But I just want to tie it into the question. I just want to tie it into the housekeeping question, Brian. So, any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
Possible.
No, there isn't. But that's not even what he's trying to do.
Well, that's what's done in celestial navigation. Regardless of what Charles is trying to do, acquire angles from points, right, to a sphere that he hasn't got because of refraction, as discussed in the pre-show since 2020. What is actually done? I'm nearly there. What is actually done in celestial navigation is inconsequential to what numpties like Charles do, because that's done along a flat baseline measuring elevation angles, which isn't acquirable from a curved surface.
Look, sorry for a step on you.
Hang on, Brian. Let me.
I just want to clear this up, just because Aidan said an angle from a point. No, the point is the angle, is what he's trying to claim.
Right. So what you're trying to say, if I'm hearing you right, because you're not drawing it out, but in my mind, what I'm seeing is two curved lines crossing, and at the place where they cross, that's the point, and that's what he's calling the angle. I'm going to contrast that with a plus sign, two straight lines crossing, and where they cross, that would be a point. He'd call that the angle. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, he's trying to use the point itself and claim that's the angle when it's not. The point is the intersection where the two lines cross. Regardless of whether they're curved or straight, they cross at that point. A point is only a point in geometry. It is not anything more. It is not a line. It is not two lines. The lines aren't straight. The lines aren't curved. They aren't lines at all. It's one point. It is not an angle.
That is some straight wizardry.
No, he's
Well,
changing.
That's wizardry right there, man.
He's not even good wizardry. He's convoluting the whole point, pun intended, obviously for me, because he's trying to get him off the death of the argument to the globe model, which is no model at all.
Wait,
So
wait.
what's
This is
hang on, Charlie, let me finish.
sorry.
So the way he does that, can he produce a 90 to subtract the altitude, the elevation? Can he do that? Can you produce a 90 from the way that he's reasoning?
No, because you can't. It's a point. You can't. It's a point of intersection. It is
Right.
internal. It is not like there's no external. You can't measure a point.
Right, that's why-
A line is a series of points conjoined. A point is
Yes.
just a point. In GeoGebra or in CAD, you can put a point on something. That point is nothing but a point, a reference point. It is not an angle. It is not two straight lines. It's not one straight line. It's not one curved line. It's a point.
We
He's
can
trying
dismiss-
to change geometry. So
Yes, we can-
let me finish. This is what I'm trying to get across. He's trying to create a right angle without a right angle, then move it to the center of a globe and start claiming he's measuring arc lengths.
Right. So we can dismiss everything he's saying until he's able to prove a 90-degree to subtract from. So he's done.
Well, this is the thing, though. You will never define a point satisfactorily in geometry. Actually, you can not define a point because the moment you do, it becomes problematic to geometry. It can only
So
like
somebody. Sorry, John. I was
Well,
just
I
going
was
to say
just gonna
maybe
say-
somebody should just give him a point and just say, "Give me the angle of this point," and just say thanks.
Point is
What-
just a concept.
Just let John get to the end of his point. He's so close. I'll win next. Go ahead, John.
Well, a point cannot be defined in geometry because if you try to define a point, you're giving it geometry. It's like a fundamental building block. It can only be defined axiomatically by its properties. You cannot define a point. the moment you
Axiomatically.
do-
Did you just say
Well, you couldn't
Hold on,
if you
hold
use
on.
coordinate systems.
Did you say axiomatically? Oh, I like Silk. I love it. Got some great words last couple of days.
Right. It's where two lines meet is a point, but a point can also, be a dot on a paper. So you don't want to define a point.
Well, it's a
the moment-
coordinate.
What's the point?
But without the point, without the whole, is absolutely meaningless. But a point within a whole, within a volume, or on a sheet of paper, now it's a coordinate, and in
Right.
that sense, it does have significance.
Absolutely. So, in terms of where we're going to put that point, we're going to put it into a grid. And in terms of navigation, which is why we're discussing these angles in the first place, I'm going to pass over to Brian if he's still around. What type of grid do we put it into, Brian, when it's a point, a coordinate, as Arwin is so eloquently just highlighted?
A flat Earth grid, whether it be Cartesian or latitude, longitude. It's a point within a grid.
Cartesian or, latitude and
Cartesian,
longitude. Right.
Yeah.
Both are flat in nature. They have to be to give you baselines and 90s. Indeed. I hope you're all paying attention. That's the crescendo at this point. Regardless of why we're discussing these presuppositional R values that lied about by Charles Math, that are lied about by Charles Flat Earth Math, in respect to him not needing to use an R value to assume when he hasn't got any justification for its measurement when I had him over a barrel on his own channel, because we never leave this echo chamber. Nevertheless, on Charles's channel, he was held over a barrel because he said he didn't need to assume R when he didn't have a measurement for it. Now, with his assumption of R in tow, he's justifying how he can get angles from curved baselines, which he can't by saying he can use a point. What, to then use 90 on the equatorial plane in hell? Meanwhile, we're actually using a flat Earth Cartesian system, a grid, with flat baselines measured to angles on the surface and to points below them, geographical positions, GPs, Positions on the ground. Ground positions, sometimes referred to as. Well, those ground positions are in the ethereal lands of space. They're on the equatorial plane. It's the ground you're navigating. So flat Earth grid required. Flat Earth measurements required. Earth is flat. That's how it's navigated. You're not going to get around it by claiming angles come from points.
We've done
So
a full.
So
We've
can't be
done
done on the surface of a sphere, right?
Can't get, an
Yeah,
angle
that's
from,
obvious.
can't get an angle from a curved baseline, Neil. So no.
Right.
We've done the full. Go on.
I was just trying to say in summary that what he's trying to do is throw out all of geometry. Is essentially what he's trying to do, just to keep his ball.
That's illegal.
No, it's worse than that. When we first started this, they were saying, shh, don't say 90. Now, why do you think they were so afraid of 90? When we brought out celestial navigation, elevation angles, all the citations backed up with diagrams. What's a 90? Elevation angle. Right? What's a 90?
It's an
They
angle
need
between
one.
two straight lines.
Right. And the
That's why it was
vertex.
so devastating.
Right. And so now the full circle, and this is what they have to go to because they're going insane, is to I can't even say the word now, but anyway, to make it a point rather than a 90-degree angle. They can't deal with it. But in actual celestial navigation, the elevation of the star is subtracted from 90 degrees. You can't get that from a point, but they have to go here because they can't deal with the Earth being flat. They just can't deal with it. So this is why they're going crazy.
It's crazy because this guy's a teacher. Like, I thought it was crazy the first time I heard him say you don't need R for a ball. Like, what the hell are you talking about? And then now he's talking about you can get angle from a point. It's like, what? Oh man.
Well, it's no different than Michelle Thaler on the show that we did a Friday ago, saying all kinds of nonsense about rocks and dust and our futures. They have to go there. Life is meaningless in this heliocentric space monkey ball that's spinning around, that isn't spinning around. They have to make everything up in order to live in the world that they've created for themselves. And they'll say stupid things just to stay there.
Shout out to Godzilla37. He says, this super chat is powered by a quantum graviton particle designed specifically to crash Nathan's computer. It didn't work, but thank you for the super chat. 62 people watching. Going up rapidly. Please
Did
share.
someone actually?
My bad. Just plugging my own show. Please share the show. Please smash the share button. There's 60 people watching because presumably the regulars have already shared it, and if you knew, come via that share. So please share the show if you've not done so already. Massive thank you if you have smashed that share button. That's why we're creeping up in numbers. Hopefully we can get over 100 today, early rather than late. Please share the show. Go ahead, Darwin.
So somebody actually said you could get an angle from a point.
Are you kidding me? We just spent 20 minutes discussing this. Yes,
Yeah,
Charles
well,
Flat.
I wasn't there when it first brought up. Yeah, I mean, I just got in there about the point thing. But I mean, somebody literally said that, but what? What does that
No,
even mean?
Armin, no. He said the point is the angle.
What?
Yeah.
That's even worse.
What?
But bro, that's why I called it.
Like at minimum two-dimensional.
Arwen,
Off
that's
your
why I
mic.
called it wizardry.
Back off your mic a little
You're
bit,
trying
Arwen.
to be a wizard.
Yeah, but it's like incompatible. Like a point is like, what is it? One-dimensional?
A point.
Zero-dimensional? An angle would be at least like two-dimensional, wouldn't it?
It would, but
point
can you
with-
back off your mic just 2 inches, Arwen? You're clipping your mic.
What?
Back off your mic 2 inches.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Chocolate. Sorry. It's just I can't stand the sound of clipping.
No, it's okay. It's just, yeah, Arwen, I understand why you're confused. It's like, what the hell is he saying? Yeah, he's saying that you can get an angle from just a point. No, you don't need lines. No lines meeting at a vertex. Just a point, and you can get an angle. Like, this is some crackhead shit. This is
Yeah, but
nuts.
from what to what? If it's just a point, from what to what? Isn't the angle like from one thing to another? It's like,
Bro, don't try to understand.
Don't
This is
try
just
to make
wizardry.
sense. don't try to make sense of this, because in order to keep their globe, they have to totally go against all geometry, all axioms. They have to make up stuff just to keep their globe. And this is what Brian is trying to say. He's
Before we
making
get
the
into what
point
Brian's trying to say,
angle.
Are you
just
sure
before,
he
hold
didn't
on, stop.
misspell the word angel?
Nobody's paying attention. Stop. Just before you get into what Brian's saying, another shout out to Godzilla37 says this one's cleaned of gravitons. Thank you very much for the super chat. However, what Tenth has just said, I just want to critique a little bit. When he says, don't think about what they're saying, it's stupid, basically. He's talking to you, the audience, not Arwin. I want Arwin to understand this nonsense and wrap his head around it. So don't try and put him off. But from the audience's perspective, Tenth, you're absolutely correct. And as a general sentiment, you're absolutely correct. Just specifically, it was only because Arwin was the person you were addressing it to. Not for Arwin. Arwin's bag is figuring out this garbage nonsense and wrapping his head around it so he can get into that world of fuzzy logic that works on a tangent that doesn't work because it's straight or bent or whatever. Arwin needs that mentality to function. So, sorry to speak for you, Arwin.
No, that's fair enough. But I'm still. Are you sure he didn't just misspell angel? Like an angel from some point? I mean, that makes more sense.
No, he's saying a point when realistically, at a minimum, you'd need 3 if you're going to call it an angle. He's saying 1 point gives you an angle because he can't get an angle from a curved surface. This is the bottom line here. So he's saying, oh, you don't need right angles then. For what? Your zenith angle?
Well,
yeah, you do.
I got a question.
You're going to minus it from 90. Go ahead, Tenth.
Yeah, question for Brian, if he's still here. So what was the response on the show he was at to his claim?
Yeah, exactly what Nathan just said. You need 3 points for an angle, interconnecting. That's exactly what Nathan said. It's like the vertex is the point of intersection. Now that wasn't stressed, but it was just a point. Just Bev said you need 3 points for an angle. You need 1 point connecting to the other point, and then that point connecting to the other point. You know what I mean? That's two straight lines.
That's the conclusion. So perfect. Unless anybody's got any Swift points, hello Quantum Eraser. We're going to do a video, so we're going to be covering this. And while everyone's gathering their thoughts to round out that last subject, I'm going to say
no. I got one.
Okay, yeah, you can go ahead. I'm just going to tell people while you're talking, because obviously that's of a lower priority. They can go and let this person know that at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, as is usually the case. We would hope that the person we are responding to, in this case, the BBC themselves, would put my link to offer me the same algorithm love I am offering them in this instance. So please go and let them know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. We responded to your video with Brian Cox. Leave some nice words. Go ahead, Quantum Eraser.
Yes, you said you can't get an angle from a curved surface. As it turns out, you can't get a point from a curved surface either. From math, open reference, a point is an exact position or location on a plane surface.
Right, we did cover
Yeah.
that. It was who was it that brought it up? It may have been Arwin. In respect to you're going to plot it into a grid.
Right, the point on its own doesn't exist. It requires a medium in order to become significant.
Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with my point.
On a plane surface, you say?
Yes, that's what I did say.
We will.
Yeah, it's really stupid that I would even have to do this, but maybe after he posts his double-blind physics experiment, he can get to that.
Yeah, it's because if you have 2 points on a circle, the only way to connect them is through the chord line, which is a straight line. So the points are the 2 ends of the straight line.
Godzilla says, whose point is this now?
You can't. You can't have a point on a curved surface. It's in Master B. You can go get it.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. The point I'm making is that those 2 points are connected, are part of the plane surface or part of a straight line. They're not part of the surface, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, if a point is on a surface, then it must be planar.
Yeah,
Right there, first sentence.
yeah, like a point in the center of a circle, not a sphere. Circle would be a point on a planar surface, because a circle is a planar surface.
Oh, this memory configuration's driving me nuts. I'm just trying to triple click the web address. But, oh, come on! Got it. Right, I'm going to paste the link that QE's just posted to us. It's on screen now. You can see it in the first sentence. A point, I can't read it with it highlighted. A point is an exact position or location on a plane surface. Full stop.
Yeah, on the top part, it's even better. It says a precise location or place on a plane, usually represented by a dot.
Oh, this PC's driving me now. At least it's not falling over. I should focus on the bright side. Mouse is doing weird stuff because the memory's not configured properly. Aside from that, hopefully I can actually pause and play this video without too much. I'm going to use the keyboard. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so yeah, let them know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me.
We're concerned with the efficiency of steam engines. You know, how hot should the fire be? What substance should you boil in the steam engine? Should it be water or should it be something else? These were profound questions. And out of those questions arose the science of thermodynamics. It's when...
Right, straight problem immediately. So thermodynamics, the descriptions thereof are just descriptions. They're not science. That's a misapprehension. The only reason you describe them as science is so that later on in this video you can grease the skids of descriptions you will ascribe to things like stars as also being science. Because thermodynamics is correct. Obviously, it's a law of nature. It's correct, right? Yeah, it's a good description. Yeah, it's a description of something that occurs always. Yes, that's correct. Well, that's science. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. No, it is not. No, we don't know the cause of entropy, for example, the second law of thermodynamics. What's the cause of entropy? Because that's the only purpose of science, Cox. You should think you'd know that. You'd think you'd be educated to a high enough degree to understand what science is. The assertion of cause and effect reasoning based on natural phenomena observation and a formulated hypothesis to be experimentally validated. That's science. Descriptions of things that occur always, that's thermodynamics. Descriptions aren't science, Cox. You're wrong.
Concepts like heat and temperature
yes.
and energy.
Pause! Why won't it pause when I press the button? I'm already said myself, I must use the keyboard. Right, we'll do that going forward so I don't lose my rag with this computer.
Entered the scientific vocabulary for the first time.
Scientific vocabulary. Is that a reification fallacy? Science doesn't have a vocabulary. You have to define terms rigorously when you're doing scientific methodology, but it doesn't have a vocabulary. There is no scientific vocabulary, just specific, hyper-specific, contextualized definitions for everything that you're doing when you're formulating hypotheses.
Nathan?
Yes.
Very important point that you made for the audience and for us who've been the beneficiary of being on the show. Whenever you hear anybody, I mean anybody, say trust the science, you better ask them for a hypothesis. Because this is the hijacking. This is how they have power over people. It's become to the point where the minute someone says science is backing it up, that means it's truth. That means you can't argue with. This is what they've done, but look how they use the word so loosely. So well done on that.
Well, yeah, they're hijacking the terminology. Undoubtedly, as I said earlier, he will grease the skids by calling description science so that his descriptions can later be called science. That's the reason it's done.
Now, along with that deeper understanding emerged what is probably the most important law of physics for understanding the evolution of the universe and the passage of time.
Descriptions of things occurring always don't give further explanations for the beginnings of the universe. Now, in terms of thermodynamic laws, you can ascribe the questions that should be asked to the ontological primitives if you're going to rewind the arrow of time. But the arrow of time description, that's the second law of thermodynamics, will not give you any answers for the beginning of time. It merely describes what is occurring always.
It's called the second law of thermodynamics.
How very cinematic. I wish that happened when I said those words. The second law of thermodynamics. Cut to the fade out of a window into some desolate land.
The reason the second law of thermodynamics was so profound was because at its heart it contained a radically new concept, something physicists call entropy.
It is entropy. That's what second law is describing. It's the entropic law.
Entropy explains why left.
One more time.
Not according to Rumpus, it's not.
The second law of thermodynamics does not apply to the Earth. Rewind.
I
Fast
dedicate
forward.
this episode.
Again,
Sorry.
chocolate. Go ahead.
I dedicate this episode to Zanuck, who showed up here and told us that second law of thermodynamics is not entropy.
Yes, that's their whole point. He got that from Rumpus. And the reason why he said the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the Earth is he didn't connect it to entropic law because they think they're different. Well, Rumpus thinks they're different, and he Jedi mind tricked Zanuck and a few others to say that the second law is not entropic law. That's why he says that. Because he says, yeah, entropy applies to the Earth, but the second law doesn't apply to the Earth, is what he's saying.
Gotcha.
That just means he doesn't understand what the second law is, right?
That would mean that, yes, by implication, by direct implication, if he's saying the second law doesn't apply to the Earth, which we've got him on record as saying, and then Arwin asks, you've said entropy doesn't apply to the Earth, because obviously Arwin appreciates that the second law is entropic law. So when Arwin then postulates to Rumpus that he doesn't appreciate where entropy does apply to Earth, it's a law of nature, he says, I've never said, this is Rumpus, that entropy doesn't apply to Earth. It's like, yeah, John, to answer your question, that would mean he doesn't understand what the second law is. Or entropy.
Well, actually, he does understand. He's just doing that on purpose.
Well, the second law of thermodynamics cannot apply to the globe Earth model because it's a second law of thermodynamics violation in the respect that the gas pressure, which is at high pressure, to fall in line with the description of what occurs always, would move towards the low pressure. That's the sky vacuum known as outer space. Well, the fact that they claim there's no container but a high pressure gas that you can look at back from space at the blue marble with its clouds hovering around on the surface, not dispersing into the vacuum that were you to be in it and they lie about being in, you'd need protection around you to keep the gas that you're breathing from escaping into the sky vacuum, but the Earth that you're looking back on has no containment. Well, that's a straight up second law of thermodynamics violation. Entropy would take hold, the gas would fill the space. But that can't apply. So therefore, Rumpus says the second law doesn't apply to the Earth. Because if it did, we wouldn't have any, we'd all be dead. We'd have no gas to breathe. The gas would fill the sky vacuum. The gas we're breathing.
No, you're not getting it. No, you're not getting it. No, I told you. He thinks the second law of thermodynamics and entropic law are different. He says entropy. He must admit entropy applies it. Go back and listen to what he said to Arwin. I'm telling you that's the basis of his rationale. You follow?
Yeah, I totally get it. 90 people watching. Please share the show. It'd be great to get to 100 people before the half-hour mark.
It sounds like he's really saying the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the globe Earth declaration. So I have to break it up into two parts.
I've just said that and QE's just pointed out where I'm wrong. But you can go back and listen afterwards. We're going to carry on with Brian Cox for now.
Elements, mortar crumbles, glass shatters, and buildings collapse. And a good way to understand how is to think of objects not as single things, but as being made up of many constituent parts, like the individual grains that make up this pile of sand. Now, entropy is a measure of how...
I have to get out of the habit of using my mouse till this PC gets overhauled again. Okay, right. So he's talking about it in context, and it's perfectly reasonable what he said so far. Nothing wrong with it. Other than our example doesn't use sand, it uses gas. So think of a load of gas contained within a balloon at a higher pressure, right? Now that's a tiny little difference in pressure compared to what I can't help but label, with the globe Earth rhetoric in mind, atmospheric pressure, right? The gas we're breathing has a pressure, and if you increase that pressure by putting your lungs to work to force air into the balloon, stretching its skin, it's at a higher pressure. Now that's just, like he's described, just a group of stuff. But in the case of gas, it's not attached. It's all bouncing around freely, unattached, unbonded. Now what happens when you pop the balloon? You take away the containment. It equalizes. Well, that is the arrow of time in essence. That is a high pressure going to a low pressure, in the same way as hot will always go to cold. That's entropy, a description of an effect you can observe that would be described with the second law of thermodynamics, otherwise known as the arrow of time. Now he's contextualizing it in the form of decay. Nothing wrong with that either. But our example from this point would deviate from his because he's using solids. We would use gases to debunk his heliocentric worldview with a sky vacuum.
How many ways I can rearrange those grains and still keep the sand pile the same?
What about functional sequence specified complexity? Interesting that we have a sandcastle example for your evolution that you mentioned earlier. The likelihood of us becoming complex beings based on your Big Bang evolution nonsense would be to say that over time, if you waited there long enough, one day a fully furnished hotel with running water would wash up in the sand. That's about the likelihood of us developing the complex nature of our cells based on pure chance.
He just debunked Professor Phil Belland and Conspiracy Cats. I don't know if you remember what they said.
No.
But second law doesn't apply to matter. It only applies to energy. So why is Brian Cox explaining this with sand?
Because they're both idiots. As I just said, I just agreed with him. It's a good job I just agreed with him and said there was nothing wrong with this description up until now then. Yeah, the two numpties that oppose us on the anti-flat earth side of this, one that ran away with his tail between his legs, Conspiracy Cats, and the other that's a numpty parroter. That's the redneck retard.
Did they say that's for real? That the second law doesn't apply to matter?
Just going to apologize to the audience.
Yeah, I had a whole show on it.
What the hell? I must have missed that one.
Trillions.
How would you measure energy without matter?
You've got to remember that you can't just... Chocolate, I realise that when it's contextualised by QE, he's correct. He's not misrepresenting them in any way. That is absolutely correct what he said. However, being where we are, knowing what we know, you have to put yourself empathically into the baller's shoes in this regard, right? So take Conspiracy Cats. He's got to get around a second law of thermodynamics violation, hasn't he? So that's where his mind is taking him. Now, I realise that the end result is pure numpty, and you can't quite believe it, but surely you can, based on what you know about our opponents in this regard, right, Chocolate?
Oh yeah, I believe it. It's just it's kind of unbelievable. Sorry, I just can't help it. I didn't hear that one before, so that's cute.
Trillions.
So they might want to have they might want to have a talk with Brian Cox then.
Millions of ways of doing that. I mean, pretty much anything I do to this sand pile, if I mess the sand around and move it around, then it doesn't change the shape or the structure at all. So, in the language of entropy, this sand pile has high entropy because there are many, many ways that I can rearrange its constituents and not change it.
I just want to check if anybody's disagreeing with him at this point.
That example doesn't make sense to it whatsoever. He's just moving sand around. That's not the whole point of entropy.
No, but he's saying it's already at a high entropic state. You know, it's not a sandcastle, although that would still be a very high entropic state. But I don't disagree with him. Does any other than Brian, who will just ignore and move past quickly, disagree with him?
Can you play the last 6 seconds again?
In the language of entropy, this sand pile has high entropy.
Okay, so the language of entropy, it has high entropy, the sand.
Yes.
Entropy is not a
Disorder.
language.
Just saying in the language,
Right.
when in the description of the second law, you describe it as having high entropy. There's nothing wrong with that. Why? I thought we could just move on.
No,
to
it's
the
No,
second.
I'm not, I wasn't finished. So basically what I hear him saying is that if you go to the beach and the people are walking, that sand gets kicked around by people, the wind, everything else. So it's always changing. It's got high entropy. It's never, but he said the same shape. That's what I didn't get.
Me either. He said it changes. The shape doesn't change. What does that mean?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
He's talking about its molecular structure. I don't think it
Gotcha. Okay.
should hold.
Well,
I think
That'd
we're
be
fine.
major, not the minor.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Because there are many, many ways that I can rearrange its constituents and not change it. But now let me create some order in the universe.
Is he going to make a
Now there are
sandcastle?
approximately as
Yep.
many sand grains in
Yes.
Yeah.
this sandcastle as there are in the sand pile. But now, virtually anything I do to it will mess it up, will remove the beautiful order from this structure. And because of that, the sandcastle has a low entropy. It's a much more ordered state. So many ways of rearranging the sand grains without changing the structure. High entropy. Very few ways of rearranging the sand grains without changing the structure, without disordering it. Low
Look,
entropy.
there's a good point in here.
Again.
Yeah, there's a good point. So the only way that you can decrease entropy, there's two ways you can do it, and they must be used in combination. So what did he just use? Number one, he used intelligence. Number two, he used the right amount of energy. And it has to be the exact amount of energy and the right type of energy to reduce entropy. So we're well away from natural law because you got a human mucking around. Does everyone follow that?
Wow. YouTube gives me a heads up that
Yeah.
I've already had a copyright strike for using this video in response.
Really?
Yeah, I'll appeal it because we're responding to it. But nice that it tells me while I'm streaming.
Outstanding. That's all I had.
Thank you.
right. So basically what you're saying, Huey, is he, the intelligent one, took a mold. And so intelligence was used to offset entropy the way he was showing it earlier. And he used just the right amount, precise energy to do it, meaning the
Yep.
right amount of water with the sand to hold the form.
He needed intellect and information.
Yep.
Now imagine I was to leave this castle in the desert all day. Then it's obvious what's going to happen. The desert
I think based on your evolution story, it will develop plumbing.
winds are going to blow the sand around and this castle is going to disintegrate.
Really? Nah, surely it'll develop more complex structures within itself. Right? Eventually, it'll
become
turn into
Sandman.
a living structure just based on pure chance, because that's how evolution works. It will evolve, will it not? Will it not develop a moat by itself? Why not? Surely it'll evolve.
It's going to become less
Only if it gets struck by lightning.
Right.
ordered. It's going to fall to bits. But
That craps on evolution. Basically, in that last statement, Cox has debunked evolution. The arrow of time only moves in one direction. We're all moving towards entropic death, if you will. Well, that's not me moving towards more advanced mutation, is it?
think about what's happening.
Nathan, you're straw manning him because he only said if you leave that out for one day. You need billions of years, man. What do you mean?
You need billions of years for the arrow of time to, move in a different direction? You're saying decay won't continue to be a law of nature as he's describing it here if I incorporate my crazy Darwinian notions of evolution. Suddenly entropy stops working the way it works.
The
Yes.
confession was, we all know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but he's saying
Point
something
is going to
opposite.
get vilified.
Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I'm saying my critique of his use of sand will be vilified soon.
Okay. I didn't realise you'd taken it so personally, but we'll find out.
I mean, on the fundamental level, I mean, the wind is taking the sand off the castle and blowing it over there somewhere and making a sand pile. There's nothing fundamental in the laws of physics that says that the wind couldn't pick up some sand from over here, deposit it here, and deposit it in precisely the shape of a sandcastle. You know, in
What?
What? Sorry.
Is he out of his cotton picking mind?
Yeah. Is he have his cotton pick in mind, did you just say?
This is that shit that they'll
Yeah, that's
say. They'll say,
terminology.
oh, most likely the probability of that will never happen, but there is a possibility.
So
Like,
he's just double speaking, flat out double speak. We know what happens with this if we leave it. The wind will come and take it away. However, there's nothing in the laws to say it won't turn into a sandcastle. Sorry, what? This
Well,
isn't
that would be
show me
the
evidence.
law.
telling me there's
I've
You
nothing.
gotta
heard
show
this
me evidence of that.
It's like, do you remember F1 racers? Right, Gordon Murray putting a fan on the back of an F1 car. Well, there's nothing in the rules to say that can't be a fan holding the car sucked to the ground.
Well, Kiri,
this type of thing I've heard before. I heard one guy, I don't remember who, or this was a while ago, but he was describing entropy and he used the plate breaking. Like you drop the plate and it breaks into pieces. And he literally said, there is the ever so slightest possibility that this plate will come back together, but the probability that it won't is very high. Like that's how that's how this guy described entropy. This is exactly what Brian Cox is saying.
the decrease in entropy was just described with intelligence and the right amount of energy. Does the wind do that?
Like I say, I called it. I said I think that there's no reason why, based on evolution, it can't just develop plumbing. So he's saying there's no reason why it can't just blow away and form the same sandcastle, right? Okay. Well, I'm saying there's no reason you can't walk away and it develop plumbing. It's the same thing. When I say it, it sounds absurd. When he says it, it's just straight up doublespeak. It will decay. Okay. Decay isn't making another castle just because in the law of nature it doesn't say it can't. When it's specifically saying in the law of nature it will decay.
What he's trying to do is add the word random into entropy. When entropy can't be random to be entropy. It can't be itself, let's just say, if it's random. But that's what he's trying to do with his sand.
Principle, the wind could spontaneously build a sandcastle out of a pile of sand.
I have to do some pausing because I've already got a copyright strike for this. So just to keep my habit in when I'm dealing with BBC material, clearly they've got a much, much more vigorous firewall or whatever it is that they'd call it in the algorithm to stop you using their material. Well, if you use more than 10 seconds of it, then it's not responding to it.
Right. Well, they don't like to be challenged either. They would rather not be held accountable for the things that they put on the BBC.
Has anybody ever seen a sandcastle be built spontaneously?
No.
Never.
No.
None were plumbing, that's for sure.
Yeah, but you need about
Can I make a
950
comment?
billion years.
Okay.
See, Brian knows.
Yeah, even with 950 billion years.
I've not been around
Is
that
the
long.
wind random?
No, I love the
Is the wind
747.
random?
Right, I understand. We've all heard the 747 illustration. We dismantle every rivet, every bolt, everything on the 747, lay it in perfect order, components with components, wires, miles of wires, you name it, everything. all the aluminum, everything's taken apart. You lay it on a big tarmac, and then you say, how many years will it take by chance, if we even give them the parts that are already made? Forget about manufacturing any of this stuff. Let's just say give it to them. Just dismantle the 747, lay it all out. And then how many years do we have to wait for it to spontaneously be put back together?
Well, I'm going to say your example's great because obviously to your average layman, they can understand that a Boeing jet is very complex and all of the wiring and all of the machinery is very complex if you were to assemble it, right? However, I'm going to ask for backup on this one because I'm not 100% sure that I'm correct in saying this. Even the most simplistic cell would be orders of magnitude more complex than that. Am I right?
Absolutely, you're right.
Yep.
But they have DNA information saying that it fills up so many encyclopedias, just a little fraction of your DNA. And they're saying there's enough information. Well, again, I have to go into their stupid paradigm to go to the moon and back so many times if they were attached end to end. I mean, this is so nonsense what a cell has in itself.
See, that's the stuff that makes me say, how can you not believe in God?
I think laying out stuff end to end, I think that's your intestines or your nervous system or something like that.
Probably.
That was Fred Hoyle's example of why he converted from atheism towards the end of his life. He used a junkyard as his example, and life, something to this effect. I'm paraphrasing. Life is tantamount to tornado going through a junkyard, and after it leaves, there's a fully built 747 that caused that was a riff. It still is in some places, but
didn't he coin the phrase for Big Bang?
That's a great example, but I'm still right in saying that even as a crude example that every person could understand, hurricane comes through junkyard, after it's gone, fully functional, polished 747, right? Okay, but like I say, the complexity of life itself, at the most simplistic form you can isolate, would be orders of magnitude more complicated than that.
Yes. Well, to be specific, it's functional sequence specified complexity.
Indeed. Functional sequence specified complexity is what we're discussing if you want to look it up to get more information on what we're talking about. QE normally gives an example with a sandcastle, which is why it sparked this discussion, which is QE's example of the wave comes in, as it recedes, fully the most beautiful sandcastle you've ever seen. Functional sequence specified complexity.
The thing about the DNA, though, is there's all the stuff that they call junk DNA because they don't have the intelligence, or none of us have the intelligence to understand what it means. So they just write it off and ignore it. So, yeah, it would have to be orders of magnitude beyond what any person is capable of understanding.
You would think that the plain facts of the junkyard would turn any evotard around.
There's no reason why that couldn't happen. It's just extremely, extremely unlikely because there are very few ways of organising this sand.
And the arrow of time's decaying it.
So that it looks like a castle.
Yeah, what he's had to describe is the opposite of the direction of the arrow of time. If you've got the stuff described as being in a high entropic state when it's just a pile of sand, and you're describing it as a low entropic state when it's a sand castle, then you'd have to go from a high entropic state to a low entropic state in your description. So you're reversing the arrow of time. That's all you're doing because it doesn't comport with evolution. That's the only reason you need to do this.
No, but they have to understand their mentality. His mentality, I couldn't say this earlier, I was busy. His mentality is that time is a thing, like an actual thing that is also like decaying with entropy. You understand? In his mind, time is a real thing that is being affected by entropy, as opposed to just a way of describing it.
It's overwhelmingly more likely that when the wind blows the sand around, it will take the low entropy structure, the castle, and turn it into a high entropy structure, the sand pile.
So that completely contradicts the last three statements then?
That I told you that's what they say. They'll say there's a possibility it could happen, but it's probably not, most likely.
If you're watching this and you want to support the channel, please hit me up on PayPal, because this is definitely going to get lots of copyright strikes from the BBC. It's flashing warnings every 2 seconds saying, "Warning, just a heads up, we've detected copyright audio and video in your live stream." Oh, thanks, YouTube. That's really kind of you to let me know. I'll be sure to let my audience know to hit me up on PayPal rather than Super Chats for today.
Hey, I know what's going on. I know what's going on. This video is so devastating because of all the points Brian Cox is contradicting himself with. They don't want anybody to review it.
I agree with 10.
Entropy always increases.
So it doesn't make a sandcastle from sand then?
Yes. It always increases. That's interesting. Are we breathing gas pressure?
It always goes to a higher state, always increases. But sandcastle, low entropy. Sand pile, high entropy. And according to you, always in that direction. So never the possibility of a sandcastle developing then. Ever, Cox. Yeah, that's why you're employed, Cox. You're a malleable clown sellout who will basically say anything that's on the script. So the script dictates that you will say the arrow of time is such that you'll always go to a high entropic state. And you'll describe in the script how the sandcastle's a low entropic state and that the arrow of time is always such that it will decay. However, there's a small chance that it'll do the complete opposite of what I just said. Now pay me. I'm going to go on to some other wank project that somebody's going to pay me to say a complete nonsense statement and then contradict it. Yeah, you're a total sellout. You should be ashamed of yourself, actually, Cox. It's embarrassing. For everybody involved. Truly embarrassing. Shout out to Unitox Femi for hitting the super chat. He says, oops, dropping the keyboard I'm using instead of the mouse. It's all gone wrong here. Shout out to Unitox Femi. He says, shout out to natural law, sea level, all triangles and horizontal lines, gas pressure, and special thanks to the sextant. Indeed. There's a lot of shout outs in that super chat. And I agree with all of them. Thank you very much indeed, Sasha. Really appreciate the support.
What was it you just said before that, Nathan? You said something there, but just prior to that.
About Cox contradicting himself, about saying that the castle's low entropy, the pile of sand's high entropy, it'll only go from low to high, it'll always increase, but there's a small chance it'll decrease.
But
what?
Yeah, but you said that Cox should be ashamed of himself, right?
Yeah, he should.
But is he not just an astrophysicist?
I'd call him a bad actor.
Yeah, but is he titled an astrophysicist?
Yes, he's
Cox,
an astrophysicist.
Yeah, so he doesn't have to be ashamed because they can come out with any rubbish. When you're an astrophysicist, you don't have to adhere to reality. That's why they get involved in theoretical science.
Oh, I see. It's like saying, no, you don't need to be ashamed. In the job title of fraudster, you're going to have to do a bit of fraud. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's part of the job.
I kind of agree with Brian. The only reason I wouldn't blame Brian Cox for this is because, again, this is not the first time I've heard this type of thing used in the description of entropy. Like, whenever I hear it, it's like, all right, we're doing good until we get to that. If for some reason it's something that they have to say, that there is a possibility that entropy could decrease, but it's most likely not going to happen. Whenever I hear it, I'm like, why are you guys even going there? Just stick to reality.
Well, Brian's basically saying the hangman's conscience is clear. It was the justice system that put him at the end of the noose, him pulling the trapdoor open. His conscience is clear, right, Brian?
Yeah, that's what he's trained to do.
Yeah, he's trained to open the trapdoor and kill people.
He just contradicted. Oh, hold on. He just contradicted himself. Last 5 seconds, he said entropy always increases. That's not what he said a few minutes ago.
Exactly. So why do they do that? Is my question.
So
like, why not
entropy always increases.
You hear it?
Yeah, so no sandcastle going to be created then if the arrow of time's moving towards decay. it's not moving towards making sandcastles. Shout out to Godzilla. Why no super chats, Neil? Why is he asking Neil that? I don't know.
Not because it's over.
Nathan said PayPal.
Holy shit! Why is that? Up on the screen. Why is that? Because it's overwhelmingly more likely that it will. No, that's not. There's no chance or probability here. He's a knucklehead. That has nothing to do with it at all.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were finished.
No, that's right.
Yeah, they're trying to remove intellect and information out of the equation. Because that's what you would need to build a sandcastle. The wind is not going to do it. The wind is a random thing based on different pressures, temperatures. Temperature, you know what I mean? That's random. Wind is random. It's not. You need intellect and information to build a castle. You have to know what a castle is.
Okay, one sec. One sec. Quick shout out to Michael for hitting me up on PayPal. Really appreciate the support with 100 people watching. Thank you very much indeed for hitting me up on PayPal.
That's why he asked me that. Because I said in chat, no super chats, give Nathan PayPal. Well, he asked a question of me. I got to answer.
Oh, just gonna tell QE off. Do you mind? Neil is assisting me in my e-begging plight. Can you not do that, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's not intellect and information, because with intellect comes information. Right? It's intellect.
That checks out.
It's intellect and energy, the right amount and type.
Unitox Femi says, with intellect wins, you can do it. With intelligence, sorry. Because I'm hearing intellect while Kiwi's talking. With intelligent wins, you can do it. Oh, I follow what he means now. With intelligent wins, you can do it. So what Kiwi's saying is you need some intellect in order to produce the right amount of energy and know what you're going to do. In other words, producing the sandcastle required forming the mold and making the sandcastle mold and then putting the sand in with the right amount of water and intellect and energy, and all those things were combined. Unitox Femu's reply, no. With intelligent wind, you can do it. Ha ha ha. Thank you for the super chat, Unitox Femu.
Get a leaf blower. See how well that plays out.
You guys don't have
So the moral of the story here. The moral of the story here is, remember, the second law of thermodynamics is a natural law. Natural law. To temporarily thwart entropy, you need intelligence. See, as soon as you say intelligence, then and decreasing entropy, then you're outside of the natural law. Follow?
Oh, wow. The guy from Montalabos just emailed me. Good job. I'm looking at emails for not super chats, PayPals. And the spreader for the new graphics cards coming to me tomorrow. So the guy, Craig, who does the PC, is off till Monday. But that means that come Monday, I can actually get the memory put in the right slots and the failing graphics card changed out. Excellent. I didn't think it would be anywhere near that quick.
I know that was important, but you just over-talked what QE was saying about second law, natural law. Can you repeat that, QE?
Well, before he does entropy change Bryony back into a girl? I have no idea what Bryony is, but thank you for the super chat, Globe peer review.
Yes, entropy only flows one way, and that's to increase entropy in nature. The only way you can temporarily thwart entropic law is to apply information or intellect and the right type and amount of energy. But the only beings, see, as soon as you say beings, you're talking about some type of intelligence. So you're outside the second law of thermodynamics parameters.
Well, this goes back to nature can't create itself, because where's the intelligence?
Correct.
QE, remember this? Refrigerator.
Yes, I do.
Why is that? Because it's overwhelmingly more likely that it will.
No.
Indeed, no.
Wait, just no.
It just no, correct. Also, it gives me an opportunity to, interrupt this music so I don't keep getting more. I'm pretty sure you can only have one copyright strike per video, right?
It seems incredible that a law that says that sandcastles don't spontaneously form on the wind.
It seems, ridiculous to say that the law that says that won't happen would have you describing it as happening. Why would you round out with that?
Could solve one of the deepest mysteries in physics.
How things did get created when it specifically describes how they'll decay.
It's ridiculous.
But by saying entropy always increases, the second law of thermodynamics is able to explain why time only runs in one direction.
And sandcastles that you've made decay and don't form a lower entropic state with time. Wow, that was the height of doublespeak.
No, it's the inflection. It's the inflection of his voice. He's saying something so stupid, but if you say it just with the right inflection, if you play the last 10 seconds, it's like the whole thing has contradicted himself. But the way he says it, it's like he's found some great discovery.
He just needs a harp playing behind him while he says it.
Of what a globe requires in order to justify being an anti-flat earther. You just have to say, well, what's the definition? Define the word. What does it mean? And they all die because all their arguments die, that is. But they don't want to define it. They want to go on this fairy tale story of how second laws can be violated by a spinning globe with air not going into a vacuum.
While simultaneously telling you that the law can't be violated. So that's cute.
Yeah, exactly. The wind can form the sandcastle. Where'd you get the wind from on your globe? Where'd you get that high pressure wind?
We reviewing more of the video because he didn't get to the point. That's showing.
No, that was it. That's a short video.
So he just got to the point of straight after that you can beg the question, or he got to the point of kind of begging the question and then not going further. Pretty vague, Brian.
No, I think you called it, Brian. When you have to deal with the silver bullet that kills the whole globe model and evolution, you have to do very short, vague, beg the question, do all these things, have that violin music in the background, and then say nonsense like sandcastles always go to more disorder, but chances are, look at us. So obviously we made it.
What's evolution?
What's evolution? That's a mixture of eggs and protein and some milk in a blender. And then you press go, and then it just evolves.
Primordial fish frog soup. Or sheepdog, whatever.
It's never been observed, QE. Evolution has never been observed.
Never been. You still haven't defined it. Citation, please.
Well, citation. I can't give you a French car.
Chevy made them too.
Yeah, that's true. I got one a few years ago on the freeway.
A Chevy citation.
Yo, to answer a flat earth, just see this coming from every angle. The tactics are getting, I would say, pseudo sophisticated, but they're trying. Neil will tell you, Flats will tell you, they even got two globers giving pseudo debates, one portraying a flat earth, or either the flat earth is a brain injured idiot, and they're arguing 6-year-old points on live streams.
That's not new. That's
I'm
like
talking
an
about
old tactic. They're bringing back old tactics.
Right. That's what I mean. There you go. That's what I'm saying.
Garbage.
They're starting to do that again. They're starting to do that again because they have no other choice. Their alternatives, they're desperate.
So back to one baller pretending he's not a baller but a flat earther making stupid claims. Wow. A made up debate.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Well, they're not coming on the show here, and so they have to create their own show where they can have a chance to win.
And that's the funny part about that, right? Because I've put people onto this, and they're like, "Oh, the Globers that come here are they're just actors and shit. I'm like, no, they're not. We don't do that. We have no necessity to do that. We don't need to do shit like that. And here you got the Globers actually doing that. It's so pathetic.
Ken Man, did you watch the video that I sent to you twice now?
No, I've had a busy day. I plan on watching it. Thank you for resending it, though. I'll do it today.
Well, that's the video we should be reviewing, right? Because even though it's made by Red's Rhetoric, right? Most of it, and I mean the majority of the video, is involving Astronomy Live, who's trying to use astronomy, right? And tactics within astronomy to try and measure a distance to the sun. But why it's so prevalent is because it reverts straight back to the EQ mount and all the things we know about that and about there being no tilt. The no tilt day, right? Equinox, right? He literally admits that you could not find the velocity of a satellite moving through the sky or anything else, right? If it's geostationary. So off the surface of his globe. So he has to put himself at the center of a globe on the equatorial plane at equinox and then measure the movement. There's so many begging the question fallacies, but so many confessions in that video. It's unreal. And the confidence level out of them, as if they've done something brilliant. I don't want to go into how they got. I want 1 second. I won't even go into how they came up with a distance to the sun, right? But we should be reviewing that video because I know Nathan is like, it's just Red's Rhetoric. I'm not going to review him. Listen, see people like Red's Rhetoric, right? Blue Marble Science, all these people. These are the people that people like Brian Cox will eventually, if cornered, start pointing to.
Well, I can see
just
now,
like they have in the past.
Yeah, I can see why you recommended it. So I'll go through it because that's devastating for them, what you just said.
Yeah, this is why I'm trying to get you to see it. Because if you mention it to Nathan, he'll review it. If I mention it, he won't.
No. What Nathan wants is someone to go through it, especially if it's a longer video, and give the minute marks. So I'll go do that because if it's anything, even if you're exaggerating on what you heard, this is devastating.
I'm not exaggerating. I'm holding back. I'm literally holding back. There's no need for minute marks. The whole lot of it must be watched. All of it must be reviewed.
Yeah, but if it's a longer video, whether like the short ones he gets through, but if it's a longer one, then the minute marks serve a purpose for him, even if it'll take 2-3 days to do it.
Are we talking about Red's Rhetoric's comedy hour?
I don't mind covering it. If you think it's pertinent, Brian, I'm led by you guys with what you want to cover. Typically I'll get a video and I'll go, I don't want to cover this. Put it on and everyone will respond to it really well. So I have no idea what's a good video. So far, Tenth's done put some really good stuff on. Some of it's come from channels with 300 subscribers, Brian. And I don't object, I just put it on. If it's relevant, it's relevant. We respond as we respond.
Well, Mitchell sent it to me and he said, you have to watch this. And I trust Mitchell's, what's the word I'm looking for? Discernment. And boy, was he right. It is such a comedy show. The amount of confessions that happen in it. And at the end, the confidence level in the end, and if you read into the comments, the confidence level in the comments as if something actually happened. And all that actually happened was a complete destruction of their own model. I mean, devastatingly destroyed. And they don't even see it.
I got to go, but I'll go ahead and do that, Nathan, and post it for you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
No worries.
Is refracted curvature out there?
Calling refracted curvature.
Yes.
I still don't have anything in my inbox.
Yeah, I'm lazy. I'll get it to you today.
All right.
Ah, that's brilliant news. I'm really pleased about that.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about it the other day. The importance of knowing why distinguishes you from, um, somebody who's just repeating stuff and someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
That was in reference to Witsit. So we were saying, or I wasn't, but somebody was saying, Witsit understands the argument at surface levels to the point where he can verbatim pretty much parrot off the argument. But if you were to ask him, well, what does that prove? He doesn't have any depth behind or understanding behind what he's been parroting off.
That's correct.
Well, I personally always found IQ tests to be a load of rubbish. I could never take them serious, an IQ test. I don't think I ever did one. Maybe one, I think, with my friend as a joke online or something years ago, or he
Yeah,
did
but
it.
those ain't real ones.
Well, I don't
Ones
know. I don't know
online.
what they are. To me, they're just a joke. It's just to me, I just a joke. It doesn't mean anything because there's so many people that are in Mensa that are absolute boneheads. I listened to a guy who had supposedly some big super IQ. He had like a 150 or 190 IQ and what it was. And I listened to this guy on television, and he was an idiot. I mean, absolute idiot. You could sell this guy sand if he was standing in the Sahara Desert.
I think we should change their name to, with the high IQ, we'll call them an absolute Witsit. A freaking absolute Witsit.
Well, I don't think that's fair because it's just an intelligence quotient. It's a mark of your potential. It's not your actual intelligence.
Why do you always got to ruin it, John?
Yeah, but I always find it dubious when someone is trying to live off of an IQ test level. It's like, well, how do you even take that serious? I don't know. I don't know how to. It's like an egg and spoon race. You're the egg and spoon. You're the best egg and spoon race guy. You know what I mean? In your vicinity. Do you know what an egg and spoon race is?
I do, but I remember Rimmer from Red Dwarf he would be Arnold Rimmer SSC. Silver swimming certificate.
Yeah, it's kind of, and even that is more. That has more meat on the bones. Let's just say. I mean, I don't understand the whole IQ test thing. It's just never meant anything to me. Never.
It tests different types of intelligences, and then it places them all on different arcs, and then it gives you a variant score based on that, like spatial acuity, comprehension. There's a multitude of different factors that go into it.
Does it test your memory?
That's part of it, yeah.
Well, at one time, unfortunately, due to circumstances I won't go into, my memory is these days very bad. But one time they were trying to give me specialist, when I was young, specialist awards for my unbelievable memory. Now, some stuff happened and my memory is gone now. It's gone very bad. But at one time I had brilliant memory. But that didn't mean I was smarter. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't get this. I have an IQ or whatever, so that must mean that I'm more smart than anyone. It's like, no.
Sorry, what were you talking about?
I forgot.
Hmm.
That it? At the end. With that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams. Hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, PayPal link, smashing the PayPal link, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!